All right, welcome. I see you all made it back safe and sound across the weather. So we're turning to the next panel, panel session 2, on electrical grid security and resilience. And let me say this panel was a bit of a casualty of the weather conditions. So the panel more or less became a fireside chat. But we have 2 wonderful attendees. So let me just turn things over to Allison Kaufman, who's Vice President for Strategic Electrification and Member Services from the Old Dominion Electric Cooperative, and Jonathan Bransky, who's the Director for Threat Intelligence for Dominion Energy.
Thank you. Great to be here. It's great to be here. There we go. I think we'll start off with just a basic introduction about ourselves and our organization. Really appreciate the focus of this year's event, including this energy sector, and being able to spend a few moments about the work that the electric utilities do that help power the cybersecurity work. The resiliency and the importance of delivering those electrons in order for us all to do the work in this room. My name is Allison Kaufman. I joined ODEC last year in a member service and strategic electrification role working on energy programming, but I've had a long career in the utility industry, having been at Dominion Energy for 17 years and joining the cooperative space. Let me tell you just a little bit about ODEC and the cooperative space. ODEC is the generation and transmission provider for electric cooperatives in the state of Virginia. We have 11 cooperative members. Many of them are in the room today representing the electric co-op family. So ODEC generates the electrons for our members and puts them on the grid. Now we only own transmission on the eastern shore of Virginia, about 100 miles on the eastern shore of Virginia. So we actually rely on 4 different transmission operators in the state of Virginia and in the PJM network. This is going to be some additional acronyms to learn throughout our days here together, but PJM is the regional transmission operator, a 13-state grid operator of all the generation and transmission assets. Their role is to really facilitate the price, the market for electricity, and determine what generation stations are most viable to come on to support the need. So at ODEC, we have a generation fleet of nuclear, coal, natural gas, and renewables, and we support our members at a system peak of about 3,000 megawatts. I will pause there, and maybe that's a little bit of an overview of ODEC and the grid for the cooperative nation.
Sure. I'm Jonathan Bransky. I'm the Director of Threat Intelligence for Dominion Energy. I oversee our strategic threat intelligence function, which is looking at cyber threats, physical security threats, and anything that feels like a security threat. We're looking at it from a holistic standpoint, so think a little bit all hazards from a security perspective. My organization also covers insider threat, so the insider threat programs there, as well as the 24/7 Physical Security Operations Center and team that rolls out all the physical security technology controls that the company is using. On the side, I also work a lot with our industry partners, our government partners, on all things security related, as well as security policy matters. That's a little bit about me and my role at Dominion. As Allison described, Dominion's different than the cooperatives. We are a vertically integrated utility. So we start with generating the electrons on the generation side, moving them over the high-speed transmission lines, and then finally delivering it to the end customer over the distribution system. So when we look at sort of the security landscape and the resilience landscape, we're looking at all aspects of it, from generating the energy all the way to delivering it to the end customer and the actual meter.
Yeah, and we mentioned this title of this session is called Resiliency, but hand in hand is reliability. Reliability is making sure there's enough electrons on the grid, or in the case of the winter weather now, that the wires and poles are up to even deliver those electrons to the meter, to the home. So there's reliability, making sure that we're consistently on, and those are measured through a variety of regulatory agencies. There are basically satisfaction scores, reliability scores that utilities are graded against to ensure reliable energy is delivered. So there is a need to meet a SAIDI, a CAIDI, and a SAFE metric for reliability. And then when you talk about resiliency, the ability to recover and come back online. And that's some of what we've talked about, playbooks and drilling. That's some of what ODEX organization works on as well, is how do we bring up, what are those most critical assets, and in what sequence are they coming back online? If you've been in the utility industry, you will also have heard about the 2003 Northeast power outage. That wasn't caused by a cyber attack. That was caused by a tree branch falling on a transmission line. Millions of people were in the dark for multiple days because a tree fell on a transmission line, and the equipment wasn't able to prevent the cascading effect that it had across, starting in Ohio, all across New England and the Northeast. So being able to recover, the resiliency, the hardening of the grid, being able to recover from major events and even winter storms like this named storm we're in today.
So we're going to bounce around a little bit in our chat here. So one of the topics we wanted to cover a little bit was sort of the threat landscape to the electric sector and the energy sector. And I know we heard a little bit on panel one. Dave Ring during lunch talked a little bit as well, especially on the cyber side. But taking a look at the threat landscape going back probably about 10, 15 years now. So cyber has been a consistent drumbeat on that threat landscape. So is physical security. So when you look at some major events that have occurred sort of sector-wide, I mean, one of the biggest ones is about 10, 12 years ago, and I believe panel one mentioned it in passing, but the Metcalf substation attack that occurred in the San Jose, California area really highlighted physical security and the threat to the energy sector, and specifically the electric system, that can occur at a substation by a determined adversary. It's an unsolved case as far as the sector is aware, right? But we have a situation where a substation, a transmission substation, was attacked by snipers where they shot up a large amount of equipment inside that substation. On the side, which nobody talks about, is the interdependency with another sector. They also cut communications outside the facility, right? So that was a major action that caused change in the sector with regards to how we viewed security of our assets, right? That put a spotlight on the need to not only protect them from a cybersecurity perspective, which the sector started heavily doing in a regulatory manner with what's called the North American Reliability Corporation's Critical Infrastructure Protection Standards, which was a set of cybersecurity baseline requirements that had to be followed. Metcalf moved us into an area where we started looking at our high profile, highly critical physical assets and determining the protections that should be at those as well. So you have that sort of set of the threat landscape. So there was a heavy focus on physical security about 10, 12 years ago. Then if you roll forward about 3 or so years, you have the Ukraine electric system attacks, which have been attributed to Russia and the Sandworm threat actor. But around Christmas time in 2015, 2016, right, we have a sequence of 2 attacks. The first attack was at the distribution system level, where they attacked electric distribution utilities. Think of those as the people who are actually delivering power to businesses and homes, right? And that attack caused about 250,000 customers to lose power in a series of electric utilities in Ukraine, right? The attack showed that there's a lot of ways to get in to the system from a cyber perspective if you're not doing the basic good cyber hygiene that was required. The second attack, which occurred almost a year to the day, was actually against the transmission system this time. And instead of attacking multiple utilities and causing the impact, this time they attacked a single substation at the transmission level, caused about the same impact from customer outages. Again, about 250,000 customers lost power briefly as a result of that attack. So that showed at the cyber side that there were adversaries who were looking to cause not only cyber disruption, because obviously they disrupted the cyber capabilities, but they moved from cyber to a cyber physical attack, where they caused a physical disruption as a result of their cyber activities, right? So there's been this back and forth between a physical security focus and a cybersecurity focus, and it's been a very heavy cybersecurity, and that threat level has not changed. It just keeps elevating itself up with the various nation-state actors, the criminal actors. We talked about Colonial Pipeline, ransomware is the criminal side, right? And then about 2 years ago, we had another event on the physical side, and everybody's probably familiar with neighboring utility just south of us, Duke Energy, had a number of substations, again, shot at, which disrupted power to a series of customers on the North Carolina-South Carolina border. And again, the physical security threat has now reappeared as a focus area that the sector really is concerned about. It's not that we weren't concerned before, but we have now another data point which shows that those assets are targets for those who want to cause the sector harm. And our worry as a sector is not just it causes us to have power outages, stuff, it's the actual customers on the other side. There's a reason why Dave Ring at lunch mentioned water, telecommunications, as well as energy. Those can be considered lifeline sectors. There's heavy interdependencies between those sectors and a lot of the other, if not all of the other 16 critical infrastructure sectors. Electric likes to think of ourselves in the middle, because almost none of the other sectors can do what they need to do without us.
Yeah, very, very true. To speak about the generation side and kind of the resource adequacy from as a generating resource and making sure there's enough electrons on the grid, I mentioned that PJM regional operator. Summer of 2029, PJM is forecasting that demand exceeds supply. So in our service territory, in Virginia, Maryland, Delaware, Pennsylvania, New York, we will not have enough generation to support the demand that is on the grid. And again, that PJM is that system operator, helping make sure that no matter where the meters are located, there's generation throughout that grid that can help support. So there's a few things that go into that. Primarily is policy. Policy by those 13 states in PJM's area, being able to encourage generation in those states. And in Virginia, we have the Virginia Clean Economy Act, helping to encourage additional renewable generation on the grid while maintaining the reliability and resiliency. So the load forecasting and that resource adequacy no longer has this long lead time. And part of that is the reserves are continuing to come down because load growth continues to exponentially increase. And that load growth is coming from a couple different sectors, one being electrification, and how can we do that most efficiently? So that's some of what my day-to-day role is helping to promote kind of beneficial electrification that in tandem comes with things like electric vehicle load growth and how do you manage that for the grid. And then another aspect of reason for this load growth is data centers and the national security element that comes with our ability to process and handle data. In our service territory in Virginia, Virginia has seen it, and rural cooperative neighborhoods are beginning to see it. In the next 10 years, over 60% of new data center load growth is expected to be in cooperative service territory in Virginia. And so that's a great opportunity for us because traditionally electric load growth has been somewhat stagnant, single digit year over year, no load growth or single digit load growth. Data center load growth is exponentially increasing that and putting additional pressure on the overall grid and how we meet those needs, because we all are serving a very critical service. We that's one thing I love about being in this industry, is just that mission driven feeling that that you have on your communities.
So I want to tack on to a little bit of where Allison was going. First of all, for those who are not from the electric sector, when we say the word load, we mean demand. So that's how much energy our customers are asking for at any point in time. And it's important that we actually understand demand or load, because Allison was describing the grid and the fact that generation has to come online, and we need to know how much we need. One of the main things to keep in mind about the energy system, especially the electric grid is a very large machine. And that machine requires load or demand and supply of energy or electricity to be in balance pretty much at all times. So it's different than other types of systems where you have a supply sitting there just sort of waiting to be used. An electron generated needs to be an electron used. The machine needs to be in balance at all time, because there's certain other physics dynamics that occur in the system that if that starts going out of whack, some other key attributes of the system start moving outside of bounds that are expected. And that's when you start seeing dynamics like blackouts, brownouts, and things like that, because it's the system trying to keep itself in balance. So that's one thing I just wanted to make sure we're sort of clarifying when we're talking about the demand. When you look at sort of the system, it's very important for the sector, both on the security side as well as on the reliability and delivery side. We need to be in constant communications with our partners and peers. Those utilities who are adjacent to us from an operations perspective, it's important to understand the condition of their system at all times, as well as them to understand the condition of your system, so that those impacts of load and supply are kept into play. The same thing's important on the security side. Dave mentioned at lunch, partnerships. I mean, it's really we've learned over the last decade and a half that each entity in the sector sees only what is happening at their network, at their utility. If you're not communicating with your partners, be it within the industry, be it law enforcement, the intelligence community, sharing that information so that you can get a better common operating picture of what's happening throughout the sector and throughout your region, we can't do the security function without that anymore. I mean, it was one thing if you roll back the clock 10, 20 years ago when, at least on the cyber side, it was actors for notoriety. Their goal was not necessarily disruption or stealing information. They just wanted to show that they could create the bigger attack at the time. And for those of us who have been in the sector or the industry, you'll remember the big email attacks and all those where all your inboxes filled up with emails because it was just a rapid fire piece of malware which just kept generating email, right? That's moved now, right? The attackers now actually have either a goal financially in mind or an actual operational goal to disrupt. And tying back to my description of the threat earlier, right? That's what you saw between Russia and Ukraine. They weren't looking to steal data. They weren't looking to just cause an administrative disruption at the utilities. They were actually looking to cause an impact to the delivery of the commodity electricity, which was relied on by the citizens of that nation, right? So when we look at the security side, that's our worry right now. We are worried about the criminal actor, but to be honest, the bigger worry is that actor that actually wants to disrupt the service that we're trying to provide to communities that we support.
Yeah, so what becomes some of the solutions and resilient preventative measures? Some of what we are seeing in our communities we serve are more projects related to microgrid solutions. So should the larger grid go down, having still some sort of backup generation source within a smaller, for those either essential assets or whatever that community is serving. So probably a plug for tomorrow afternoon's Smart Communities panel. I suspect they're going to dive a little bit more deeply into the value that that brings. And then I also wanted to mention another element of a resource in all this is you in the room, being able to respond to these pricing signals, these demand, these load signals. I will say that a lot of our end use members, whether those are homeowners, commercial entities, or data centers, they are all very cognizant of I think we're all aware of how we're using energy in our home. And if I can delay that usage and charge a little later or do that load of laundry on the weekend versus 5 p.m., right? Like some of those are some natural behaviors that our data is showing that homeowners are aware of, and certainly our businesses are aware of as well. Many of them are signing up to participate in programs that they're incented to reduce demand during peak periods. So there's a lot of ability to incent and ensure grid resiliency with participation from folks in this room. And there is a lot of interest and collaboration in wanting to deploy technologies that help make that happen.
So before I jump into continuing our conversation here, if you have any questions, please interrupt us. We're not waiting for a Q&A session at the end, given our limited panel here. So if there is a question that's burning, please just walk up to the mic to ask it. So talking about sort of the general situation of threat and security, Dominion Energy had 5-6 years ago decided to switch its model for security from your traditional cyber and physical security function to an intelligence-driven security function, where the collection of threat intelligence is being fed into both the physical and cyber sides, as well as getting a feedback loop from those two sides about what's actually happening at the company. On top of that, a vision from an individual who will be on a panel right after us, we're in the process of building, definitely on the physical security side, a common operating picture for security, in which we are layering in a geographic information system, the ability to see different types of information all at once in one place, from as basic of where is our assets, where are our people, where have our historical security events taken place, and what were they, to other things like where's the nearest hardware store, where are our first responders, where are the hospitals, where are the places that we can go. We've layered on top of that real-time intelligence feeds about what's been happening in those local areas, be it coming off police reports, news reports, or other reports. That is helping us sort of improve our security function by giving that as a tool so that we can see it all in one place, as opposed to going to a lot of different systems or asking of a lot of different people, right? Second thing is, on the first panel, they talked about the concept of having response plans, recovery plans, and all that. The reality on the security side is eventually something will happen. So if you don't have recovery and response plans, and you don't test them, practice them, and drill them, when that bad thing happens, you're going to kind of make it up on the fly, even if you wrote it down, because nobody's going to remember to go look at the procedure. And if you're doing that, the event's moving faster than you can, right? On our cybersecurity side, we've been holding an exercise called Cyber Fortress for the last 3 years. And that is a close to real-time cyber drill. It's not a tabletop. I mean, most people are used to drilling their response and recovery plans via a tabletop. You sit everybody around the table, everybody pretends to do what they're supposed to do as part of the drill. Cyber Fortress brings together government defenders, company defenders, other partners that we have in place, and they actually work through a cyber range of an actual event, and they do it in near real time. So as the event's occurring, the defenders are trying to defend the network while the attackers are continuing to change their tactics and move through the scenario on their own, right? They do shift changes during the exercise, which would naturally occur during a normal event. So you can practice those type of battle rhythms. If you're not doing those type of response and recovery drills and not actually practice them, I suggest you take some time to figure out a way to do that, even at a very small scale, right? Also, never let an actual event go to waste. Leverage that to learn and practice your drill. I mean, you can see that the utilities do this all the time for weather and natural disasters. You can see how we are pre-staging equipment, pre-staging personnel, tracking and modeling what's happening from a weather perspective, trying to determine where we might see impacts as a result of that weather system. You should be doing the same thing on the security side.
I know we wanted to ask each other what keeps us up at night and what specific project or topic.
Now, for what keeps me up at night, from a security perspective, it's actually the unknown. We know the actors, right? We on the cyber side, we know the criminal actors, we know a lot of their techniques and tactics, and they evolve over time, and we can track that. But you never know when they're going to be targeting them. It's not like on the physical side, where you can look at a historical history of activity, and you can sort of predict sort of what might occur. You're not going to be 100% right, but you can predict when theft will increase versus surveillance and vandalism. There's times of years and sort of an ebb and flow to those. On the cyber side, nobody can actually predict. I mean, I joke, my team's heard me say this before, like nobody sits there and goes, November is going to be distributed denial of service month. Everybody's going to be hit by a denial of service. We already know this now, so prepare for it. It doesn't work that way on the cyber world. So that's one of the main things that keeps me up at night, because the next day somebody can choose to actually target you, and you need to be on top of your game at that moment, because you're not really going to get a heads up that it's occurring most times.
Yeah, and for me, I think it's a lot of the utility programming relies on a lot of variety of technology. And again, in homes and businesses, there are grid assets in your home today, in businesses today, and those assets aren't utility owned, but they can be easily connected and are connected in some utility programming instances. Signing up for a utility smart thermostat program, signing up for an electric vehicle charging program. Those assets kind of behind the meter in your homes and businesses are additional penetration points. I think the lunchtime question, Mitch and our co-op family was even talking about, you're going to go after kind of that smallest thing and easiest thing, and how do we as a utility make sure that whatever offering we're making available, again, to help balance the grid and balance resources, that all those assets are protected and secured.
Yeah. One other thing to sort of add, a second thing that keeps me up at night is that now everything that's connected to the system can actually be used as a vector to attack the system. So if you look back maybe 20, 30 years ago, this happened to the telecommunications sector. Prior to home computers, pretty much you had a phone in your house, and that phone was your interaction with the telecommunication provider, and that's all it did. You talked on it via voice. Then as home computers showed up, those phone lines actually became sort of an access point into the telecommunications network from a data communication and a data attack perspective. Because all the devices on the other side can now be used to connect to that system. And if you weren't protecting that central part of the system, you had a new vector that you had to worry about. When I look at the electrification and a lot of the dynamic that's changing, it may not be an attack on our computer systems or our SCADA systems or other control systems, but we can have an attack which has to do with the load and demand, right? So look back to Texas, right? Had a cold snap, right? And we knew a lot of energy uses. Now imagine same cold snap, and imagine the demand response system that's in place in the same state that allows you to touch all the smart thermostats that are participating in the program. And now you can have a threat actor, instead of attacking the utility, they can turn around and attack one of these devices and say, hey, look, I'm going to turn 200,000, a million thermostats, and I'm going to change the temperature in the house by 2 degrees, 5 degrees, all at once across the state, and see what that does to the demand signal that's happening on the electric network. Same thing with electric vehicle charging. I mean, there are common charging systems and charging platforms. These are new threat vectors which the utility may not have almost any control over, but can have severe impacts potentially to them operationally.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, just goes to one of the an EV driver myself, and in that EV electric vehicle space, the number of providers and how you connect to your vehicle, and do you do that directly through your vehicle app or through a third party, and like I think the IT term is screen scraping it basically. So right, like there's all these providers that are finding a way in this industry, in this business, and now even the auto manufacturers are trying to figure out how do we protect that from happening from a security standpoint, and yeah, from a driving standpoint of my vehicle being a smart asset that anyone could hack as well. So interesting.
All right, I'm going to look out to the audience, and we still have no questions. Are we sure? There's no questions out there. All right.
I don't know if you guys can hear me. I'll try to avoid using the microphone. Tyler DeRera, I'm with Hampton Police Homeland Security Unit. Talking threats and physical security, it's easy to dig a ditch and to put up bollards, and that covers 2 dimensions of security. With the capabilities going up on what we can buy off the shelf in the UAS, how do we protect critical infrastructure from that 3rd dimension that's provided by those UAS assets?
So I'm going to take a start, and I'm going to give a pitch to the panel that comes right after us, which will be talking about facility security and sort of resilient the facility side. The challenge to me from that perspective on the physical side, there's twofold. One, if it's in the air and it's moving, we can't do anything about it. It's actually illegal for you to take any action against something that's flying above the ground and is in motion. If it lands, you can do something about it. You can collect it, you can confiscate it, you can give it to the police, you can do a lot of other things. But as long as it's in motion and it's flying and it's above your asset, that's a challenge. It's not like you're going to turn around and you're going to put all your stuff indoors. If that's what happens, the threat's just going to change. It's just going to move from a sniper on the hill with a high vantage point to somebody flying it above. Eventually, the actor will find another way of getting to that asset. So it's more around being resilient, providing a lot of deterrence, and right now, for that threat that you're talking about, having better visibility and better awareness of what is happening in and around your assets, which is a challenge unto itself when you're looking at a utility and you may be talking about not tens of sites, but in a case like Dominion Energy, you may be talking thousands of sites. Sir.
Mitch Simmons from Community Electric Cooperative. Thank you for taking the time. We did an exercise a few weeks ago, a couple months ago, and not we as Community Electric, but the conglomerate of ODEC and the cooperatives. And it was so easy to deep fake somebody's voice, to call in and say, hey, I'm in a rush, I need this, I need this, and I need this. And it took like 30 minutes to be able to come up with that, and somebody can talk into a microphone and sound just like that person. And one of the things that I took away from that was, okay, we need to strengthen our infrastructure, we need to strengthen our internal assets by training our coworkers into, okay, if you get a phone call from the CEO saying he's needing this, just say, hey, I'll call you right back. Or tell the CEO to not to call in, training our people to say, hey, don't ever call in for a password because you're not going to get it. Because I know if they call me to say, hey, I need you to set me my password. Well, I don't know what it is. I don't care what the password is. because I can go in and change it.
I mean, you're correct. Training is one of the biggest ways there. And not just training on the fact that that capability for the threat actor exists, but the actual simple training of, do you ever get a call from the CEO directly? What is the likelihood the CEO chose this day to call you to ask you to do something, right? No, I mean, but it's a little tongue in cheek, but the reality is if you have strong internal procedures and internal controls that you know who and what is going to call, and that doesn't mean somebody can't fake it, but you need to at least have knowledge saying, hey, look, you know, the CEO is not going to call to tell me to turn on this transmission line. And the likelihood of that is extremely low.
MGM got hacked just by that procedure right there is what took MGM down.
And from a generation perspective, there are many essential workers in our economy, and one of those essential workers are your plant operators, and that is a physical job. And so some of that security defaults back to just traditionally, are you even physically there at the plant or calling in from the plant phone, the hardwired plant phone, right? And some of that more traditional means from a generation security, physical security standpoint.
Yeah, but going back to your concept, deep fakes, we've been tracking deep fakes since 2019. Obviously, it's made a lot of news recently. They continually show up. The tools out there for the actors to use are getting better and better. If you have public-facing individuals in your company, it's kind of hard to prevent them from having sound clips or videos out there somewhere. Those can be used against you. You should be cognizant of the types of information and watch for them so that you can counter them. Sir.
Hi, Joey Jones, Virginia Air National Guard. Thanks for being here and telling us all about this. I have a question. So, with the amount of people and the trajectory of the solar panels on houses, do you see is that helping with 2029? And is like, what would it take for just using that to meet the demand in 2029? It's like doubling, is it 10 times?
Yeah, so the in PJM delivery year 29, we'll have a shortfall of 1,600 megawatts. But at the same time, over the next 10 years, load is forecasted to grow 36%. So we will need 56,000 megawatts on additional megawatts on our grid. So we're definitely talking what's called utility scale. So triple-digit megawatt hour impact, which you can get with renewables, you can get with traditional generation, and also generation that is currently in development. What's really exciting is Dominion Energy's work on some small modular reactors. In the Richmond news a couple weeks ago, there's a new fusion plant being built in Chesterfield. So there's also like new ways in which we're going to be able to meet this generation growth. And it kind of goes back to policy, allowing policy to help support the enablement of that. One of my roles in my utility career was selling rooftop solar, and at a residential scale, you're talking like 10 kW. So, and certainly at your household level, that becomes your own version of your resiliency. It becomes your ability to power through a storm and stay on through a storm. That technology is very mature at both residential and like business level, including the additional technologies like batteries. Now, battery technology is also developing and evolving specifically for the utility scale. So now you're talking about some double-digit, could be triple-digit battery megawatt hour storage of battery. So there's some really exciting developments, and I think it behooves us all to help support those organizations that are trying to lead in some new technology to help meet some critical gaps that will be coming.
Ma'am,
I would love to revisit the smart thermostat program. I'm curious what the conversation looks like behind the scenes and weighing the pros and cons of bringing that many more vectors, potential access points online with an initiative like that versus the actual cyber, the threat potential there. So like, how are you
So I'll answer in a slightly different way. One, we don't have to have a program at the utility level for those smart thermostats to be a challenge, right? You can go out as a consumer and just put a smart thermostat in and look at the penetration that Nest did when Nest rolled out their original smart thermostat. I mean, that's a vector unto itself. Anything that's interacting with how you can interface with the amount of electricity you are consuming or using is a vector. And how well it's being secured is a different one. That gets outside of our control, right? Because those are devices that are controlled by the consumer at that point. Demand response, on the other hand, is outside of my lane normally, but it is a tool for utilities to help balance when you're in times of need for reducing energy consumption. It's another way, as opposed to bringing on additional generation to cover the increase. You can also request those who are willing to decrease their consumption to help you ride through that sort of situation where you're right at that top.
Yeah, we, similar to any business, will have some sort of third-party risk assessment in doing, if I'm going to do business with this vendor, this thermostat manufacturer, OEM, how secure are they? How vulnerable are they? I think probably a very traditional questionnaire. I will also say that those thermostat OEMs themselves have their version of it as well. So when you're working with Nests or Ecobees, they too are asking the utility for the same, how and why are you going to use these thermostats and in what ways? So the safety protocols I've observed have actually gone both ways in that regard to help protect the overall product and then also protecting the grid.
What an interesting discussion. Thank you so much. You know, we didn't need a whole panel when you have the right people to speak on a given topic. You know, it just goes really well. So please join me in thanking the And let me just also say thank you for helping us get back on pace. So we are just about there. Why don't we reconvene in about 10 minutes? So at 3:05, we will be starting the next panel session. Thanks.